everybody. We start off tonight with the NASCAR Power Hour here on G-Force TV with best wishes to Caitlin Patrick of the NASCAR Pinty Series. She celebrates a birthday today. So if you don't know the NASCAR Pinty Series much, Caitlin is the social media manager who does all the updates, passes on all the information, posts the interviews, conducts them, takes all the photos. Not all of the photos for NASCAR, but she takes the ones that you see on social media and does a lot of different things when she's at the racetrack. So we wanted to send best wishes out to Caitlin here in this photo with Adam Ross. Congratulations on another great season, Caitlin, and happy birthday. She does a lot for the series, so we definitely want to wish her the best. I'm Kim K, back with you here, your wingman for the NASCAR Pinty Series Power Hour here on G-Force TV, and we obviously have an off-season that we're still dealing with, but there is still stuff coming out each day about different drivers, different things that are happening behind the scenes. There is lots of talk of movement, and it's exciting. I hope that we get to dive into that stuff when news is finally going to be released. When it is released, I don't know, but the biggest thing that we're waiting to drop right now is the schedule. Expected to be next week. We're expecting it to be around the 13th. Just check which day of the week that is. So that is next Monday, where we're hoping at least to see around the 13th. Typically with NASCAR, they'll say one day and it kind of goes within the next couple. But if they do release next Monday, that would be fantastic, because then we can have a show and talk exactly about what we see on the schedule. We'll dive into that a little bit. We'll talk about the Big Three weekend out at Phoenix. And then we'll dive into some of the other rumors. But we're going to start into our show tonight by talking about a future star of racing. And, you know, I'm going to say that it's not long that we're going to have him, I think, in Canada. I think he's destined for greatness south of the border, especially after his fantastic run this past weekend out at the Nashville Fairgrounds. We're talking about Kyle Steckley, of course. Kyle, the son of four-time champion Scott Steckley and current champion team owner Scott Steckley. The 22 Racing Camp was out at Nashville Fairgrounds for the All-American 100, which ran on Saturday. And Kyle Steckley, in a field of what originally looked to be 34, was about 29. He came home in fourth place. An amazing run for an amazing young gun, somebody who has shown already the technical knowledge and the skill behind the wheel. Not only that, but also the temperament behind the wheel, that he is definitely going to be a future star wherever he decides to race. So whether or not Kyle Steckley stays north next year, or whether he has an opportunity to run down south in some more late models, we do know that he is planning to be at Five Flags for the Snowflake 100. I mean, this is a great start for him already. He finished fourth. He was in the Snowflake last year, didn't have the best of run. I would expect we'll see maybe him and some other competitors down there, or maybe Glenn Stiers will head back to the Snowflake. Maybe Trayton Lapsovich heads back down there. Brandon Watson, maybe. There's a lot of what ifs. But one of the very interesting notes that we can talk about here on the show was the 22 car itself. Now, why is that important? Well, it's important because of who was featured. And what I mean by that is Kyle Steckley had his car out at the track at Nashville Fairgrounds. But he had some very interesting partners featured on this car. Now, it could be nothing. It could be nothing, because we have to remember one thing. partners tend to come on for these events, and they might just be helping out. We saw MBS Motorsports helping out on this 22 car last year. Well, there is a partnership, and there is a lot of rumbling going on within the garage, and it seems to have a bit more legs now, but there is a pretty evident combination here on the back of the number 22. And that's Paye Racing. Not GM Paye, but Paye Racing. So JC Paye, if we aren't familiar already, team owner for Marc-Antoine Camirand and Andrew Ranger. Well, we know Camirand is not going to go anywhere. However, there are ties in history. Marc-Antoine Camirand with GM Paye were partnered with Scott Steckley in 22 Racing for several seasons as pilots of the 22, so they would have gotten to know Kyle Steckley very well. So that could very well be a partnership that was built over time. Obviously, we've seen it in the past with Tej, Group Tej being on 22 Racing equipment. But the fact that they are on Kyle Steckley's late model after the racing season, maybe there's something to this. In fact, if you were to ask some people within the garage, there very well could be some movement happening. Whether or not that is a driver related to Paye Racing or some sponsorship moving across, or whether they're just helping out Kyle Steckley. I wouldn't put it past JC Paye, who goes out of his way to help racers routinely. Perfect example of this is Paye Racing getting behind Alex Gannett earlier at Chaudière when he was not able to have enough partnerships on board his 3-car for the Chaudière event. GM Paye stepped up and they did a Dale Earnhardt Sr. throwback. Derek Warrod, apologize for butchering your last name, needs to build up some money behind him. That's how it works. Win a couple of those big ones, start getting partners. It is a good start. I really believe that our biggest, hopefully at least, the biggest deal with all of this right now, Derek, is that company featured on the side. And it's right here. APC Auto Parts Centers. Connection to Kenny Schrader because their parent company, Federated Auto Parts, and Kenny Schrader have had a long history. If there was, just say Ward. Okay. Thank you, Derek. If you are going to have somebody that is going to have a future in racing, you've got to start young. We know this already. Kyle Steckley is at that age where you've got to make the decision now. You can't wait 4 to 5 years into your 20s to make the decision whether you're going to be competing week in and week out as a racer. Now, Kenny Schrader being affiliated with this team could very well open some doors, maybe with Federated Auto Parts, and run more in the South. Now, there's a big difference here. Kenny Schrader's been racing for years and years and years and years. It's Kyle Steckley has not. However, 4th place in your first All-American 100 start against some pretty spectacular talent. Not only that, but Kyle Steckley also set the fastest lap of the entire race. And that in itself is a way to show all those down south that, hey, this kid is for real. Now, Kyle Steckley in 22 Racing could very well continue to work up here, run in the APC Series once again, run in the NASCAR Pinty Series as well. But we have to remember a couple of things. So, It depends on the partnerships. Now, APC Auto Parts, I'm not sure, but I don't believe they have any locations in the Quebec region. So automatically, does APC stick around for those events? I would say no. So if Kyle Steckley is going to run full-time in this series, he will need some more partnerships. Now, I would love to see this partner right here. I would love to see Pennzoil Canada come on and just completely do like a 22, similar to what we see with the Penske 22. Personally, I would love a different scheme itself. I think that one's kind of old by now. It needs a bit more refreshment. But Kyle Steckley is the guy that could rep any one of these brands right now. And similarly to his teammate Trayton Lapsevich, Alex Taglioni is another one who we know is crawling with partnerships. But let's just say that there's change on the horizon at 22 Racing. What does this mean? If there's change at the race team, in any sense of the imagination, there's going to have to be a shift with Kyle Steckley being put into a position as the next star. As crazy as that is, with Trayton Lapsevich coming off and winning the championship last year, I think that the time is now. You've got a guy who's just won the APC championship, beating out extremely tough competition, including J.R. Fitzpatrick, who was in this position years and years and years ago, went down south, and just like everyone else that we have had some partnerships that didn't stick around, that didn't form, and then they're back in a couple of years. Now, the one that has been the most successful to come out of this route has been Alex LeBay, but however long his tenure was, Alex LeBay is also looking to be back in the Pinty series next year. It would appear that opportunities once again have dried up. So the move has got to be made for Kyle Steckley now. You would have to think now is the time. The team undoubtedly is one of the best and is grooving right at the right time. Having a performance like they put on this weekend showcases what we already knew. And that is that 22 Racing and Kyle Steckley definitely know what they're all about. Now, while they had a fantastic season, he comes off with a fourth place finish. There's question marks still. Question marks as to who and what is going to be at that team next year. We already know Trayton Lapsevich had some major holes in his partnerships at the beginning of the year. As crazy as it is to say that, we don't know where Trayton's future is. We don't know where names like Kyle Steckley will be because of their partnerships. Is APC Auto Parts able to get someone else to come in and assist with the partners like a Pennzoil? And if Kyle Steckley is going to take the late model route, does Pinty's help? Does it really help? Or should he stay in late models? So that's question mark right now. Impressive performances regardless. Now, the big test, I feel, this was a good test. I think a bigger test will be the Snowflake because he's been there before. He knows now what to expect. If he's able to get up there and challenge some of those big names that typically run the Snowflake, then, maybe then, we'll see even more for Kyle next year. Where it hurts our series is if there's change. So, as Smooth Operator, my man Graydon Bunn says here, confirmed in the newest issue of Inside Track that Tony Spiteri has resigned from his position at NASCAR Canada. Movement in all facets of the series. So, that in itself, that news right there, is it worrisome? I don't know. In the end, I think it was too much at one time. I think there's too much on a CEO's plate. If you don't know, Tony is a businessman who is not just an everyday worker. He is in charge of a company. That's a lot of work. NASCAR Canada is a lot of work. There's only so much one guy can do. The worry is if our young guns all decide to go somewhere else. Or if there's no partnerships leading to no rides for our youngest and brightest futures. JP Bergeron, Thomas Neuveux, Trayton Lapsevich, Kyle Stackley. Got 4 drivers right there. All have amazing futures. Now, as Smooth Operator Graydon Bunn pointed out, now there's a big hole at NASCAR Canada. Now, there is a name that I believe has been out there. I'll leave NASCAR to announce that. That's their decision about what they're going to update, what they're going to talk about. The fact that it is out in Inside Track, though, does state that it is public. Boatloads of talk in NPS is true. The amount of talk, in fact, is probably way more than I've ever seen in covering the series for the last couple of years. Jim says, one thing to remember when these people sponsor cars and races, spending money with them matters, and to try and make an effort to let them know you spend money with them because of sponsorships. It's a tough deal, Jim, because I think, as we all talk about in motorsports, ROI is the most important thing. And if we can't get that, Wes says, I had a feeling that was coming. At the last drivers' meeting at Fall Brawl, they said something about NASCAR GM resigning. I didn't even see Tony at Fall Brawl. Wish him the best. Give me a call. Only problem is they'll be upset when I rename it CASCAR. I wouldn't be shocked, Derek, if there's more changes coming. Based off of a lot of conversations that I have had, but also based off of some other stuff that's come out, some announcements regarding the company in charge with the naming rights. It was announced earlier this year that Ole Mel had to close one of their plants. A big plant in Valley Junction in Quebec. Then, it was announced on GeForce TV that their partnership with Pinty's and at Ohsweken Speedway and at GeForce TV was ending. It was announced that there was restructuring. That's the alarm bell right there. When you hear restructuring, normally that's a real restructuring of allocation of funds. Now, where this is potentially really dangerous, if there's any validity to it, is that they just signed a 5-year deal in 22. So they were signed until 27. If there is a disappearing of Pinty's, that makes me very worried, because where is the funding going to come from? Jim Haynes says NASCAR Daytona Mafia didn't like anybody trying to make things better. Whether they do and they don't, Jim, it's not for me to decide. I mean, we can say that we want NASCAR, but the reality is NASCAR is not here. It hasn't been here since 2006. Do I think having a rename would be great? Absolutely. I would love NASCAR to come back. I'd argue, though, now, how many younger folks know what NASCAR is? Most, if they're racing fans, would know the name NASCAR now. If they go the route of the Mexico Series and the International Series, then all of a sudden you'll have NASCAR Canada presented by something, or a NASCAR Canada Series presented by something. Like, I could see, as Smooth Operator says, do the Cup model, where it's the NASCAR Canada Series presented by Pinty's. Like, that sounds sexy, in my opinion. Because all of a sudden, and I think I've had this conversation with Graydon, actually. We talked about this, and that a lot of people might not still know what Pinty's is. But all of a sudden, if you flip it, and you don't have Dale Jr. calling it the NASCAR Pinty's Series, you have it as the NASCAR Canada Series, I think that makes it a lot easier for people to follow. As weird as it is, hearing NASCAR Canada Series makes it sound like it is Canada's NASCAR Series. Whereas I feel like you lost a little bit of the identity with that. Now, obviously, you could switch it NASCAR Canada. It's so close to being called NASCAR again. So if they go this route, like the Cup model, as Graydon says, you know, where I think that works is we see it in the Mexico. I'm pretty sure we see it in the Mexico Series, because I think didn't they used to be called the Peak Mexico Series, and I don't believe they're even called that anymore. Yeah, they're called the NASCAR Mexico Series. And I believe it's still Euro Series? No. It is still the NASCAR Wheel and Euro Series. But if Mexico went that route, I could definitely see them going this route. Absolutely. Especially if for any reason the Pinty Series is not able, if Pinty's is not able to stick around now. I don't even know if it is still presented by Peak. I don't think it is. I don't even know yet till 22. So whether or not they go that route, I'm not sure, but I could definitely see it. I think a lot of people could see it. I mean, it makes sense, and I think, again, the identity of the Canada part in it, you know, all of a sudden you're just going to go, it's NASCAR in Canada. It's pretty clear what it is. So, again, if we're going to be restructuring, if there's going to be renaming, I could see it. I could see that name working. And I think it being a little bit better for trying to attract partners because it is very clear what it is. I think there's also a side of it, and I'd be very curious about this, that the competition might not be afraid to come and partner with it. And I think that puts series in a hole, is if you have a series that is brand named. So, like Sprint. Well, all of a sudden, if you're Sprint and you're sponsoring the series, you're not going to want a rival company coming in and sponsoring a car. If they stopped charging $18 a box for a pound of wings, maybe they could make a few more bucks. Well, I mean, I don't know whether they're the ones that are making that call or whether it is the grocery stores that are making that call, Derek. But at the end of the day, I'm a fan of their products. I thought that they were pretty good. I can't say I ever disliked their products. I thought that they were actually quite good. In terms of the cost, yeah, I'd say the cost was a little bit high for the average consumer. And I would be an average consumer, somebody that's a single household, not, going to crazy lengths to expand my cooking skills. But I definitely believe that you kind of were get them when you got them. You get them on sale type of thing. So yeah, but am I going to be upset that they were partnering with the series? No, they've been an amazing partner. And I actually believe that we got more recognition. Crazy as it is, I feel like we got a little bit more recognition with Pinty's over these last couple of years than we did with Canadian Tire, especially when sitting alongside Jane's at under $10. Well, again, there's the difference in the quality, right? I could tell you that I thought the quality of the food at Pinty's was higher. And I thought the taste was there. It's just unfortunately the cost, right? And but also availability too, right? But again, Al, to Al's point here, all of a sudden now, if you have a competitor in like Jane's that maybe wants to step in and partner with a race car or race team, now there's no conflict there. And that's what I think would be really interesting and I don't know if this is maybe they're with them rebranding the NASCAR Mexico Series. By taking Peak away, does it now open them up for other rival companies of antifreeze to come on board because there's no conflict there? I mean, I would think, like Graydon, we talked about this before. I mean, if you talk about like the Sprint Cup Series or the Winston Cup Series, I mean, at a long period of time, series partners didn't really care about other cars being sponsored by rivals. I think that's changed now. I think there's a lot of competition, and they do not want any competition in the series. Like, I can't imagine that Craftsman in the truck series would want another tool company in the series. I know we've seen Dead On Tools, I believe, actually on a couple of trucks, but I can't imagine that they're overly happy with that. Jim says, hopefully this will end with a good outcome because sponsors are super tough to come up with these days for anything. And it's not so easy down south. Jim has an amazing point because it is 1,000% true that partnerships are not easy to find here, but they are not easy to find in the U.S. anymore. And the biggest thing about that, Jim, is you're not able to find partnerships a lot of the time for the full season. There are so many partnerships that the majority of their races is less than half the season now. It is very, very, very difficult to find partnerships that are for the full season. So if we go for 14 races again in 2024, I don't really think we will. I would think that we're going to go 12 or 13. I personally believe like we'd go back a race than add. Again, though, could be wrong. And this builds on this conversation here because all of a sudden, you go, is this a good move? Well, you know what? I actually would think this is a fantastic move. If we've got this change in GM at NASCAR Canada, most of the time Stanley Black & Decker own Craftsman. Yes, they do. And usually there are limits to what can sponsor against them by contracts. Exactly. Right? But if you don't take that, Jim, if you don't have Craftsman and it's just the NASCAR Truck Series, but there's no Craftsman involved, all of a sudden now you do have hopefully those trucks that can have those competitors on those race cars. And that's why I'm looking at this going, okay, well, if we have a series like this, well then take competitors of Pinty's that couldn't be involved before, or competitors of Olymel, and try to get them in the series. Perfect example, if you take like Maple Lodge or Maple Leaf Foods, that would be competition for Pinty's on their sausage and hot dog line. Well, now those are companies that could be reached out to because there's not conflict, right? So I think that there's positives here. If, again, it's all if, right? We don't have any confirmations. We don't have any knowledge about this. It's just speculation. But there's going to be change. As Graydon pointed out, in Inside Track magazine, it has mentioned that Tony Spiteri has resigned. So it would be fact. I wouldn't expect that Inside Track would just make something up like that. Now, whether NASCAR would choose to make a decision to announce that, I don't really know. It would be interesting if that's the decision that they make. I don't really I don't really know if they would want to announce that, especially after all of the kind of the press that we had that was good about that. It really kind of sucks, unfortunately, that didn't work out. But sometimes it's for the best, right? Derek says Olimo made great breakfast sandwiches or sausages. Such a shame. Well, I mean, that happens. And yes, it is confirmed here. I'm just looking, and this is from Greg McPherson. So prior to the recent Pinty Series finale, Tony Spiteri announced that he had stepped down. Well, I don't believe it had been announced. Prior to that, he was prominent in the sport for over a decade as the face of Pinty's, a major series supporter that untimely became its title sponsor. Saying that he didn't want his news to distract from Trayton Lapcevich's title celebration, Spiteri wasn't in attendance at Delaware. Contacted by Inside Track, Spiteri offered the following statement regarding his resignation. After spending the majority of 3 decades in motorsports, the time comes to step away from the day-to-day. This last year as general manager of NASCAR Canada has given me incredible insights into the daily operations of the business. I am grateful for all the progress we have made to be able to be I am grateful for all the progress we have been able to make in both the domestic and international series. A few weeks ago, I advised NASCAR of my decision to leave the company at the end of the 2023 season. I will always be grateful for the learnings at NASCAR. As I make my transition out of the day-to-day, I am excited to see all that the sport can achieve. I am confident that the NASCAR Canada team will continue to drive the business to new heights. I sincerely look forward to enjoying a race or two from the grandstands with the greatest fans in sports in 2024. Speaking personally and on behalf of Inside Track, Tony was always a great supporter of Canadian motorsports and those involved in the industry. We thank him for all his efforts and wish him success in his future endeavors. Well, there's the truth bomb right there, coming out from Inside Track magazine. Some of us were aware of this previously at Delaware. It's unfortunate. Obviously, people need to realize that this is a very tough job. And, I think there was a lot of pressure immediately to improve. And I think what people need to remember is that there was a lot of good done this year. And one of those things that Tony had talked about was for sure getting the merchandise, getting series merchandise. And that's not easy to do either. I'd like to see Who's going to come in? I mean, I do know the name of the next general manager. That is not my place to say, but if it's who I have been told it is, series is going to have a new opportunity, somebody else to come in to try and do what they can. And I mean, obviously there was some stuff that wasn't able to happen, but we went to Newfoundland for the very first time. We went to the dirt, and we've expanded to 14 races. These were all good things for the series, but now comes the hard part. And I think the hard part is to build and sustain and bring in those new partners. The hardest thing to do, and I mean, I've had this conversation before, Canadian Tire, I think, was our biggest corporate partner. Pinty's coming in is obviously a huge one as well. But in terms of brand recognition, that's, I think, the hardest thing. The hardest thing is to try and get the RBCs, the TD Canada Trust, the Tim Hortons, the companies, Pizza, the companies where people know the name right away because it's in daily life. Tangerine, another one that these big partners in basketball, big partners here, big partners there. A lot of companies as well are striving away from sports partnerships and doing a lot more of sustainability work, a lot more of supporting charities. So that's not a bad thing. It's just we need to find those people that in those places that are. And unfortunately, we just haven't hit that right spot yet. And I think that the new GM will have to work at that. And that's going to be a work in progress. As much as I want to say, they've got to look at Ontario. And that might not be a popular decision here for a lot of the Quebec fans, but Quebec is fine. They are not having an issue with partnerships, with drivers, with interest, with fans. It's here where we're having a lot of problems. NASCAR better get it right in Canada if they want the Canadian Series to continue and prosper and introduce one of the top 3 series to us again. Got Montreal dangled in front of us and quickly kiboshed. We can't ever discount Tony's contributions. He was in a position similar to that of a politician. You can't satisfy the whole fandom. Credit to him for the recognition that he wasn't the man for the job. He admits it. I mean, he says that he and to state he didn't want it to take away from Trayton. I don't really believe it would have. I don't think it would have taken away from Trayton's celebration, because at the end of the day, that role, most fans don't really pay attention to that, right? They pay attention to the drivers and who wins the championship. I don't know if they would have paid so much attention to that, but I credit him with not wanting it to overshadow, and that's. That's admirable for sure. What they do next, I mean, I know Freshstone was involved in the series as a contingency. Are they going to continue being part of it? That's a good question mark because, he's not going to be involved in the day-to-day anymore, but that doesn't mean that he's stepping away. It doesn't say that he's going to be stepping away forever. He just says he's taking the transition out of the day-to-day operations. And, obviously... Graydon and myself are well aware of Tony, and we worked with him in 2021 and he helped us get our foot in the door in the series, and ultimately has been that very much makes it's going to make it. Unfortunately, people are not going to think about the good that was done, and we don't know. And this is the key thing: behind the scenes, conversations take months. So a lot of these schedule decisions for next year likely would have taken place during this year. So discussions over where we're going and the announcements of where we're going could very well have been put in place months ago. Some of the tech stuff could have been put in months ago. So at the end of the day, this is another person just moving on, unfortunately. And, we saw it with Sherry, and she moves on. Doug comes in, and, some stuff will change. Some stuff will get better. Some stuff might get changed. But we obviously have to see what comes out of it. And, I think that there's plenty of people that are out there that want to help make the series succeed. I think that, we've already had a various amount of names come in and out of the series as competitors. And that's the same thing is people come and go. And so, I will thank Greg McPherson and Inside Track for releasing this information. It definitely stings a little bit that it wasn't as long as I think we were hoping. And it does. It if you listen to what he's at that first part of that statement is it's 3 decades in motorsports. I think he's earned a little bit of time off, for sure. And again, it doesn't say that he's completely out of motorsports, just that he's not with NASCAR, and that's the decision he's made. So we thank him for what he's done, but it's time that we move on to look at 2024, and I think one of those things that we had a question mark over was personnel. So now there's going to be a question mark as to who the general manager is, and that will be announced. Maybe it'll be announced when the schedule is announced. I don't know. This is part of the thing that I kind of would wish. I would wish that we did get communication from our series on when stuff is going to drop. Because at the end of the day, we do need that to create buzz. You see it all the time with Bob Pockris, with Matt Weaver, with the folks at NASCAR dropping hints when the schedule. J-Ski is the big one, right? And I think for us, which I am trying to create a narrative, at least in our community group, that, hey, tease some news, tease what could potentially come, talk about it when it does come out, because we need to create buzz. If you want people to be excited about the series and talking about it, you have to keep the conversation all season long. We can't just stop as soon as the season finale is up. There is lots of stuff that is going to come. The schedule obviously being the big one. If some of these driver moves are happening that I've heard, it will shake the series up a lot. And I'm not just talking as someone who does media for motorsports in Ontario. I'm talking as a fan. Some of the stuff that has been rumored would shock me, but for the positive. I like it. For me, I attribute it to hockey. I like having trades. I like having free agent signings. Makes it interesting. NASCAR has always had an uphill battle in Canada. This is simply another layer to that. Unfortunately, it is true. And, you have to think about it, is motorsports has to compete against a lot of other sports. And we have such a short window here. If they decide that they're going to limit the amount of tracks that we go to this year, or limit the amount of races, personally, I don't feel 14 is needed. I would go down to 12. Hell, I'd even go down to 10. And the reason being is cost. I don't think we can put it on the same playing level as ARCA. I don't think we can put it on the same playing level as a development series. I think it needs to be treated as its own thing. And I mean, I know racing fans in Canada have said this for a long time, and I will say it as well. I mean, I truly believe that you need to have people from Canada running this series. You need to have people situated in Canada that can operate day to day the workings of the website, the workings of the social media. We have an amazing social media team right now. Give them as much freedom as possible. You know, I don't really know what their rules are or what they are to do, but I think, you know, let them interview whoever they want, get the amount of info out there. No, Jim, it was bought by ESPN and then it was released back because ESPN did nothing with it, frankly. J-Ski, I believe, is still its own thing. But a perfect example is like you've got people that want, you know, you have the Wide World of Motorsports, you have myself, Graydon Bunn, you have people that could very well break news. Obviously, the Quebec media does it a lot more. I don't choose to break news unless given permission. And I think that's the respectful thing to do, only because we don't want to interfere, especially because so many things can change. It is something that you're going to have to consider. I think at the end of the day, we have to make as much buzz as possible, and having people be a part of the building of this series, from fans all the way up to former drivers, current drivers, partners. And I think that's very key. Getting people that have a vested interest in this series because it is their series of choice. This series to me is my favorite NASCAR series compared to the top three divisions. The Pinty series has always been my number one. So naturally, I have a very big interest in how it operates, how it runs, and what is positive, what's not positive. We try to do a lot of fan polls on our community page because we know that there are people within NASCAR that view that page, that see that fan interaction. That's so important. You want to hear from fans? Well, put it to them, and they will tell you. It is so hard to know what's going to work and what isn't going to work. I would think that there's going to be changes in our schedule. I think we've seen kind of the dirt come in to the top three divisions, and now it's going away. I could see that happening for the Pinty series as well. I don't know whether or not Ohsweken, after its third race, is going to still be a scheduled event. That's the whole East-West thing again. Well, and that's the same thing, Derek, because I don't know if telling and having our series go coast to coast is the smartest decision. Yes, we are a national series, but the worry that I have is that you have those events. We've seen this before, and that's the worry. We've seen it before where we went out to BC, we went out to Riverside, and then all of a sudden those car counts started to get really low. 14 cars, 13 cars. That is just disrespectful to the fans. And I'm not trying to say that it's an intentional disrespect. It's not. But if you think a fan is going to spend money to see a couple of cars when they could very well have 30 in some of their late model events, you're asking a lot. It's a very hard line to be on, because as somebody who supports the series, I can see so much good here. The fact that we hit 60 drivers this year is amazing. That is the right step we're taking. However, we need to continue that. We need to be able to bring in Asa Abloy coming onto the 3-car. Partnership, full season. That's a positive. But we want to be able to get more of those partnerships to come in and be on cars as much as possible. Even if you're taking one race and getting a partner on there. And that's where we're not hitting. We're not hitting those bigger companies that are coming in for that one race as a primary partner. You kind of have to go that route. If we're seeing it in the Cup Series, the Xfinity Series, and now the Truck Series, you see it in ARCA, guys and gals cannot get more than one race, then fine, make it a week-to-week thing. It is imperative that they keep interest high and that we hit the ground running. That's the biggest thing for this year. 2024, we talked about it, Graydon and I had talked about it on the podcast, that it felt like this was the lead up. I talked with Regan here on the show. It felt at the beginning of this year like we were ramping up to 2024. And based off of the support that we got this year in the series, it would seem as if 2024 is the right way that to go about it. Now, whatever the schedule states, by this time next week, we could have the schedule out. And when the schedule is out, you know we are going to talk about it. I think there's going to be change. I mean, based off of every single conversation I've had, there is going to be change. There's going to be races dropped. There's going to be new races. That for sure is going to happen. I don't think you're going to see the exact same schedule that we got this year. I think you'll see some changes. Whether or not we get to 14, that's the question mark. I think when you go out to certain places, there's big question marks as to how long is the race distance going to be this year. I think question marks again around that. And if people are not back, why? Why are they not coming back this year? We have to get behind the racers, get behind the fans. The fan support was some of the best fan support I've ever seen for this series in 2023. Bar none. Packed. That's what you want. Now, there were some races that were not, that didn't have that support as high as it could have been. That needs some work. I think they're going to work on that. I think people don't give the folks enough credit as to seeing who's supporting, who's not supporting, where they're getting crowds, where they're not getting crowds. I think the western side of Canada is still the hardest to get. There really isn't. They're going to need some assistance, in my honest belief. I think if you're going to continue going out west, you're going to need to help some of these teams out with travel costs, with hotels. You're going to need to help them, especially like those lower teams, Josh Collins Racing, Larry Jackson Racing. If you need to combo, rides, charter planes, whatever you can do, work with everybody, work with the series, work with each other, because at the end of the day, you want a series that's going to be long-lasting. If partners come in, if partners leave, if this is a restructured name for next year, this is the push that you're going to have to take. You can't be beating around the bush. You need to push as much as possible this off-season. That means we don't wait until May to start pushing out updates. We don't wait until July. We go as hard as possible on trying to put the news out there, get interviews, get people going. Because at the end of the day, as I said, we want a series to be successful. We want cars at these racetracks. We want fans coming out. With change, there's always going to be people that don't like it. Even me as a super fan, I will not be always happy at every change that's made. Believe it or not, but that's what happens. I'm a fan first. So there are going to be things that I won't like about the series. There'll be things that I'm not a fan of. But you also have to try and look at the big picture here. What is the end game? You have to give them time as well. We've seen now. This is going to be seeing what did Tony put his fingerprints on this year. What did Doug Gonder put his fingerprints on this year? What is our new GM going to be doing this offseason? The question is always there. It's who are these big partners that we're going to be able to bring in? Who are these new names to the series could we bring in? Because there's going to be names. I mean, that's the thing, is we're going to have some interest. Rafael Lessard's another one of those names. Alex LeBay, Trayton Lapsevich, Brandon Watson, Kyle Steckley. All these names, it's all question marks, but we've got to keep these guys and gals in this series for one more year. And a year after that, bring these new partners in. You know, you've got an amazing team of dedicated officials that have been involved in this series for years. I think there will be standing room only at Granby if it happens, as the promotions from Paille and others will be huge to get people there. I would think so. I don't know if Granby, I don't know why they're not. I know they had already announced last year that they were going to be, and then it didn't happen. So whether or not they're a part of this year, I have not heard any rumor about them. There are other tracks in Quebec right now that I do believe are going to be part of the schedule based off of conversation. There's not a lot to choose from. So you can kind of take your pick. In terms of Ontario, there's really not much that we can choose from because either track sizes are too small, or they don't have the facilities to handle NASCAR. They don't have the ability to host based off of restrictions. But the fact that we still have a lot of talk, we still have a lot of things to talk about heading into 2024. We're only 2 months away from the end of the year. So there's going to be conversations had. There's going to be names coming into the series. Whether or not we like it or not, you know, there's change, and there's going to be a lot of it. I really think you're going to see a lot of it, and we'll be here for you all season long here on G-Force TV, here for the Power Hour. Big congrats this week as well to Brad Moran, former head of NASCAR, former CASCAR head, also Barrie Speedway. Brad Moran was named to the Motorsport Hall of Fame. And my favorite NASCAR Pinty Series competitor, Mark Dilley, is also now going to be a part of the the Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame for 2023. DDA Shrannon as well, commentator for RDS, longtime racer, I believe he also raced in the Pinty Series, perhaps maybe it was CASCAR, and longtime racer, DDA Shrannon. So congratulations to those three gentlemen, with everybody else that was nominated and added to the amazing Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame. All very deserving. We'll continue our conversation as we head back. To the NASCAR Pinty Series talk next week. Hopefully we'll be talking about a schedule that's been released. If not, we will definitely bring it up in the future. But those who are... Jim Haynes, thank you once again. Derek, Ward, Al, Graydon Bunn, thank you guys. Wes, for tuning in once again. Small crowds in the off season, but still crowds regardless, and I can't thank you enough for being a part of the show. We'll catch you all next week here on the Power Hour.